Hi, I'm Matt, and welcome to Tech Tested. Have you ever thought about falling off of a cliff? There is not a single moment in your life when you're stronger than the moment you're about to tumble to your doom. Same goes for a computer. I'll explain what I mean in a minute, but first I want to do our build of the week. Our 4-member Gazrith posted his computer, and guys, specs are impressive but not earth-shattering. Where it shines though is cable management. Just check out the forum, check out the pictures posted. It is unbelievable. It looks better from every angle than any computer I've ever built. Very well done. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. What we have in front of us here is our AMD sleeper rig. And I had to swap out some components. The motherboard was subpar, which a lot of you noted in the comments. The graphics card actually had to be repurposed for another computer, so I put in my R9 390, which also meant I had to drill out the drive bay cages. Moving on, a lot of the reason we picked out the components we did is price to performance, and I explained that the FX 8320E was our choice because you can overclock it far beyond that of an FX 8350 with the CPU cooler you can get with your savings. I was kind of correct. Well, I was correct. I got it to 4.3 gigahertz, which is 0.1 gigahertz above the turbo frequency of an FX 8350. So technically, we got our money out of it. The graphics card didn't overclock quite as well as I had hoped. I got the core up from 1040 megahertz all the way up to 1095. And the memory didn't overclock very well either. I got it from 1500 megahertz to 1515 megahertz. Woo! The RAM also didn't overclock all that well. Okay. We're running a 1600 megahertz kit at 2133 megahertz, but the timing's loosened up quite a bit, so we didn't really measure any performance increase from the RAM, so we used the same frequency across the board on all these tests. Now let me be clear, this is not an overclocking guide. This video is about overclocking and seeing the performance gains you can get from it, and letting you guys decide whether or not you want to overclock and whether or not it's worth it. We ran our computer through our gamut of benchmarks with the CPU and GPU overclocked, with just the CPU overclocked, with just the GPU overclocked, and with both at stock settings so you guys can see which one gives you the best bang for your buck, actually bang for your time, because let's be honest, the whole point of overclocking is that you don't spend any more money. First up is Cinebench, and yes, obviously our GPU overclock is not going to affect our results. This is a CPU test. However, you can see that in single core performance, our scaling with the overclock is pretty good. Not anything earth-shattering, but when you get to the multi-core scaling, it is phenomenal. The reason for this is the turbo frequency of the FX 8320E is 4 gigahertz, and our processor is only running at 4.3 gigahertz. When you're talking about percentages, going from 4 to 4.3 on one core is not near as big of an impact as going from 4 to 4.3 on all the cores. So kudos to the multi-core overclocking, all right on the single core. Next up on our benchmark suite is Firestrike, and as you can see, the CPU really takes the cake for overclocking gains. This is a really good argument for overclocking your processor, and this is supposed to replicate a gaming experience. This doesn't always show what kind of improvements you're gonna get, but it's a pretty good indication of what you can expect. Our graphics card did improve, but it wasn't the same level that our processor did. Next up is our Heaven benchmark with all settings maxed out, 8 times MSAA and 1080p resolution. Yes, I don't have a higher resolution monitor, so kill me. And back to the results. All of our results were within the margin of error, meaning Heaven doesn't care if you overclock your hardware. At least not in this case, not at all. It's kind of boring and I'm sorry, but that's the results we got, and moving on. Next up is our Starstorm benchmark, and this one actually was kind of interesting. When you just overclock the GPU, it saw performance gains. When you overclock both the GPU and the CPU, it saw notable performance gains. When you just overclock the CPU though, it really didn't care that much, which I can't really explain. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's clear that this game is optimized for more threads, and a GPU overclock actually benefits you a lot in this case. The multi-core utilization is actually really important when you consider that this API mantle is what Vulkan is going to be based off of later, giving you a little bit of hope that your old FX processor can have new life breathed into it. Last but not least, guys, we have added an actual game to our benchmark suite. Here we have Dirt 3, and while it's an older game, it still is a viable benchmark tool, so we decided to use it. And I ran it at medium settings. I don't know why. 1080p, medium settings. Regardless, we did see performance gains from our overclocks. Well, we did from our CPU overclock. Our GPU overclock showed us within the margin of error, and so it really didn't give us anything, but the CPU is definitely effective, showing what kind of gains you can expect. So what's the takeaway from this? Well, as you can see, our CPU performed very well when overclocked, and our GPU, it didn't do quite so well, but we didn't get a great overclock on it. Should you overclock? Well, yes. There was no cost involved except the added CPU cooler, which was already figured into our budget. Our goal was to beat the FX 8350 in cost and performance, and we achieved that goal. Obviously, disclaimer, if you overclock, it's at your own risk. I'm not teaching you how to do it. I'm not taking responsibility for it. But if you know what you're doing, read forums, and you are safe about it, it's a really good idea, and it can take your computer a really long way. Dun, 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 dun. We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you some breaking news! Guys, we have a podcast, and I'm arguing with Josh a lot that we should turn it into a video cast and maybe even stream it, but until Josh gives in on that, it's a podcast. You can download it anywhere you can download a podcast, namely iTunes, Google Play, etc. And yeah, guys, you should really check it out. We're going to be discussing current events when it comes to tech. We're going to be discussing hardware. We're going to be playing games. We're going to be making fun of each other. We're going to be making fun of AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, blah, 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 blah. It's awesome. You should check it out. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Leave a comment if there's anything you'd like us to cover in the future. Check out our forum at techtested.io and download our podcast at iTunes or Google Play.